All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Innovation Heroes, where we tap into the minds of innovation leaders from around the world to get inspiration to drive our own innovation goals. I'm your host, Adam Olsen, and I want to thank you all for tuning in today. We're very excited about this episode with special guest Naim of Galileo Global Education to discuss the rapidly growing AI technology and how it's impacting the education sector and where we need to focus our innovation efforts to manage these drastic changes. Galileo Global Education has an international network of 54 schools in 10 cities with a mission to be the world education leader of innovation, creativity, arts, and culture. Raid is the Chief Innovation Transformation Officer there with an interesting background in the automotive industry, IT, and education. So welcome, Raid. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, maybe you could dive a little bit deeper into your interesting background and what led you to Galileo and ultimately what fires you up most about being part of the team.
Thank you, Adam, for having me. I have a background in digital transformation for the last 20 years. So I'm a technologist by heart and passion and education and everything, but always lived throughout the last 20 years in the limbo between technology, business, and actual value creation from a customer point of view. And in that, I had different roles in different industries, from being BMWi's chief architect or IT chief architect when it the whole transformation around electrifying mobility was going on, to transforming other industries like insurance industries where you went direct to consumer and stuff like that. And now I'm in higher education with Galileo. As you said, it's a network of about 60 universities in the meanwhile, 200,000 plus or minus students worldwide in 15 countries, from Mexico in the West through Europe and Africa. We have universities in Senegal, all the way to campuses in China. So worldwide network that tries to push universities and institutions of higher education to thrive in elevating the education experience in general. And my role in Germany, because I'm the Chief Innovation Officer in Germany, is to focus on the digital education experience and all the digital transformation that comes with it. Why higher education? I have never been in this industry before professionally, so this is my first role, and I have a kind of a freshman's eyes on it. But I had an interest in knowledge, in the knowledge economy, in the education from a learning point of view, in many private projects that I was pursuing. I almost started a startup in that area, so it was always a passion for me. But professionally, this is my first role for a year now with Galileo.
That's really cool. I love that you said that you have like the fresh eyes, because you don't have like specific experience in that, because that's just something, us at HeroX, we're very passionate about. We believe that fresh set of eyes, not being too close to the problem, can really make or break innovation. Well, that's really cool. Very interested to hear the accurate numbers of the network at Galileo. Obviously, I got those a little wrong, but that's really fantastic. So what does kind of like the day-to-day look like there? Like you said, you're more focused in Germany, but obviously the network is very widespread. And when you're looking at kind of the digital aspect, that's obviously affecting students and people from all around the world, correct?
Yeah. So first, don't worry about the numbers, because they keep changing. We are growing very fast. That's why almost nobody's keeping up with the numbers even inside the company. So but let's take a step back, because I told you the fresh eyes was important. I think this is why also the management of Galileo offered me this role, is because they believed in this freshman's eye on innovation, especially. So if you look at innovation in general, scientific innovation, not only digital, it was about, in all industries, about mainly one thing, is how to enable personalization at scale, right? So you want to offer a service that service should be personalized perfectly for the user. And at the same time, you can do that at, immense scale.
Right.
This is the challenge of innovation, like in the economic parts of the industry that we work with. So, and in every industry was about, okay, how can I create the perfect personalized experience for the consumer, for the customer, while being able to scale that, lower the cost. And if you look at, all, especially in digital, because digital has actually managed to do that. If you look at some digital services, they actually managed to reach a very high level through a digital innovation,
Right.
at a very high level of personalization, more than any other innovation parts, with a huge level of scalability, right? And if you look at all the professions in digital, they're either in one or the other. So if you look at, all the design thinkers and user experience and data scientists, etc., they work for the personalization, while you have the cloud engineers, you have, the architects, etc., working on the scalability. So it's all
Right.
about the same thing. Now, okay, so if you look at education, you'll see that it has not achieved a good level on both in the experience that it offers to its customers. So that's why in literature you'll read that education is of a kind of a slow learner when it comes to innovation, right? So I like that quote. So and that's because if you look at, for example, if you look at and I'm simplifying here a little bit, if you look at the supply and demand part of education, if we take it as an economy, right? So you have the supply part, which is the teaching, and you have the demand part, which is the learning, right? So, and if you look at the latest development in those two parts, you will see that both of them have not reached that equilibrium between personalization and scale. And if you think about education, like the whole idea of a classroom that has been there for, I don't know, hundreds of years now, maybe 200 years, 150 years, I don't know the exact history of classrooms per se, but classroom is just a compromise to achieve both. You want to offer a specific level of personalization, but you want to scale it because you don't want to have a one-on-one interaction. You cannot, achieve that on a global level or on a scale level. So now with learning, you had a very interesting development with MOOCs, with massive online courses, and which achieved the scale part of the learning experience, but failed to offer individualization and personalization, right?
Yeah, it's getting further away from that.
Exactly. So that's why its impact was very limited, right? And you have quite a few innovators trying to go in there, but there is no huge success that would shift or would revolutionize the whole thing. In education or in the teaching part, the challenge is, and this is something I had to learn as a freshman, because all my thinking around education was more towards the learning, coming from the economy, from the industry. But actually a big challenge is in the supply part, and in making that also in the teaching part, making that scalable and personalized at the same time. And the reason behind that is with digital innovation and transformation that belongs to it in all industries, but in the education industry it's specific. When you do that, when you start this transformation, when you start change triggered by innovation, you're questioning the very essence of the value that is created by educators. So what is my role as an educator now with all this technology enablement, right? A lot of people in education, the teacher, and in the supply part, the teachers and the administrative staff, right? They define their own value by what they do in the value creation chain or ecosystem of that, right? So my task is something that does not only define the value that is created at the end, but me, myself, and my value. And then people are usually defining themselves by the value they create rather than the value that they consume. Value that they consume can be, a vogue, a mode. It can disappear. It does not really touch them, right? So you can change it very quickly with very smart campaigns and marketing, right? But the value that they create, this is something they really identify with. And that technology has started to shift that, and there's resistance, there is doubt, And that's why it takes longer than others. Sorry for the long answer, but I think it's
Yeah.
it's an important entrance into this whole new industry for me.
Yeah. Yeah, you made a lot of interesting points. And, the one thing that really stuck out to me is kind of comparing the learning and the teaching to supply and demand and, trying to find that sort of equilibrium. Because obviously, like, as you really try to, fill the demand with like scaling the supply, well, then like it seems like the quality of the supply kind of goes down with like lack of that personalization. So are you kind of seeing, or like, okay, I'll take a step back, but obviously kind of COVID and more of the online learning has kind of pushed things in that that direction. But do you find like are you seeing some organizations kind of trying to fight back in the opposite way and offer a lot more personalized education programs where it's like smaller groups and things like that, but would obviously cost a lot more? Because I feel like that's
yes, definitely. I mean, there is some kind of, I mean, what COVID did is it pushed both the learners and the educators to accept that kind of change that's happening, right? Into online, blended learning, all these kind of concepts that were still in discussion. Suddenly they were reality because there was no other way to offer or to live in that market if you don't adapt, right? So, but you didn't adapt because you were convinced. You adapt because you were forced to. At least parts of the players were, and some of them are trying to question like whether blended learning is the right thing, whether online learning is the right thing, etc., etc. But I think it's not only the online access or the personalization in terms of individuals and having a smaller number of people. I think the classroom as in a smaller number of people with personal care is not going to disappear, but it has to be combined with a high level of flexibility, because the classroom is not flexible, right? So if you want a flexible classroom, you will have to go into hybrid models at least, right? Where the learners can also decide what happens in these classrooms, between the classrooms, in relationship to the classrooms, in the context of the classrooms, etc. So I think that's the bigger challenge, right? So how do you keep this continuum of classroom, non-classroom journey? And that's where you need a lot of technology, and that's happening. But as I said, the adaptation speed of that in the education industry is slower than other industries, especially the service economy, for example, that had a big go and did not question that too much.
Right. And like, how are you finding the professors are doing navigating these changes? Like, are they happier that things are kind of going in that direction, where it seems to me that professors seem to have a little bit of a lighter lift online teaching? They can make a couple slide decks and push it out, or are they feeling like a lot more disconnected from their jobs and like their passion for teaching?
I think they're feeling the need to change very very heavily, and I think what will become very visible is that there is not only a need to change, as in you stay the same but you adapt here and there, get better, etc., but the need to reinvent. I'll try to make it a bit tangible. So do we have a clear definition? Let's take higher education, for example. Do we have a clear definition to differentiate between who is an educator and who's a lecturer, for example? Right? Because I don't think that technology will make educators obsolete. Right? There are a lot of skills and a lot of things that educators will have to do that will not be taken over by technology for a long time. However, lecturers might be very obsolete in the next few years even. Right? Because there's a huge difference between that. I'm not convinced that higher education institutions, universities, etc., have made that kind of distinction so that they start to redefine the added value that both bring, so that we know, okay, how to adapt with technology by redefining the role, by being educators, not lecturers, because content provisioning is not teaching.
Yeah.
And content provisioning is going to be taken over by the machine very soon. It has been already, right?
Yeah.
So if your job, if you define your job as content provisioning in some kind, even if it's a sophisticated kind of content provisioning, that's not gonna stay. That's not gonna stay. You have to change that, right? And even with simple automations that we have in the process of education, we are noticing that. We're not talking about AI yet. We're talking about, you know, just simple automation in the process, using some data to optimize processes, to make them faster, to scale them, etc. And even that, right, in content production and content provisioning, is changing the way we think about the value that we have to create in education by the different players.
Yeah, I know we don't want to dive too deep down the AI hole quite yet. That's coming later. But you know, it just seems like in the past 5 or so years, there's been, you know, just drastic advancements in some of these processes and technologies. And as you mentioned, the learning or education system has been, you know, a slow learner. Like, what kind of hurdles are you facing just trying to get, you know, such a massive, you know, industry to start adapting to these changes that typically has just kind of always seemed to conduct themselves how they always have?
Well, first and foremost, the challenges are not technological, because the technology you use, you can use that in the education industry as much as you can use it in any other industry. I think it's a well-regulated industry, so that's the whole regulation part, and regulation being slower than technological development is a major challenge. Right? It is an industry that has not changed a lot. I mean, leave alone the whole digital stuff, even before that, right? So when you come to the manufacturing industry has been through changes before digital even came, right? Through the industrial revolution, automation, electronics, they had their changes and they had to adapt, right? The education industry does not have that history of change, right? There was nothing that forced them to change, and so that you have this memory of, you know, we knew we had to change, and this happened. You know, you measure that with it, etc. So that's the first timer for the education industry, right? So that's another thing. And as I said, the value that is created by education is a very specific one, because it has to do with the knowledge, right? So what is it that you create? What is the value that you create as an educator? I mean, it's a philosophical question, but I would say it's knowledge. It's the accumulation of knowledge. It's the provisioning of knowledge. It's, you know, the communication of knowledge and skills that belong to that, etc. So and that is a very specific value that you cannot just question, right? So if the value you're offering is convenience, for example, with products, or if the value is, I don't know, an economical one with making things cheaper, etc., that's much easier to question, right? And to change than a value like knowledge that is a basic human, you know, we characterize ourselves with it, we identify with it, etc. So I think that's the 3 major ones: the regulation, the history of the industry, and the nature of the value it is creating. And you notice that in every step in digital innovation and transformation, in that either you have to clash with regulation, or you have to clash with the inertia of the whole institutions, right, because of the history, or you have to clash with, actually you have to explain to people that, you know, they have to change not only the way they do work, but why they do work. Right. So that's a bigger change.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to a number of different guests who are in fairly regulated industries, and it seems like it's a constant struggle, you know, across the board, especially when, you know, times are like speed is everything these days, right? And we're all trying to innovate. We're trying to keep up with all these advancements, and it's the regulations and those slow moving processes that are really holding us up. So besides that, like, is there one of those 3 kind of things that stick out more than the others that you know, that hold you up, or are they all just kind of
I mean, they play together in most of the cases that we have. I mean, you have in digital transformation and innovation, you have different areas where some play more overall than others. For example, in the whole teaching and learning area, it's more the regulation and the understanding of the value. In digitalizing the administration and the business part of it, it's a mix of the inertia of the whole organization, of the resistance to change, and some regulation, etc. So every aspect of where you want to innovate, you will find one of these factors stronger than the other, but usually they come in combination.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I don't know if we can avoid the AI topic any longer. Like you and I,
the 10 billion elephant in the room.
Yeah, I know. You and I almost just went on a tangent before we hit record today, getting away on ourselves. We both enjoyed talking about it. It's one of the most exciting things in the news these days, and it's affecting so many industries. But I think a lot of people, their mind instantly goes to education, because anybody who went through university or whatnot, they're thinking like, where was this when I was writing my 20,000 word papers and things like that. And then obviously this week as well, the announcement of ChatGPT passing the bar exam and the US medical licensing exam, like huge things like that. So I'd love to just get your take on where you see the biggest impacts of this new AI technology in the education industry, and kind of what you're doing to get ready for that.
Wow. Okay. We're really going right. So first thing, the whole assessment thing and AI or ChatGPT in this case passing some exams, it's rather a symptom of how bad we're doing assessment in the education industry, rather than how impressive AI. It is impressive, and we will talk about how impressive ChatGPT is. In this particular examples, I'm not really impressed, because the systematics behind these kind of assessment is rather not that intelligent. So it was done, as I said before, just to get some kind of scale into the process, right? These kind of tests that are most of the time multiple choice tests, where only the result counts, etc., etc. It's not actually in the nature of education, right? In the nature of education, you have to care about the result, but also the way to the result, the critical thinking, all of that kind of stuff. But because you want to scale it, you don't want to have a one-on-one interaction and have somebody taking 4 hours to grade an assessment like that. We kind of shifted to that way. By the way, and now the machine, or AI in this case, is forcing us to correct that course, right? Because that's not going to work anymore with ChatGPT. If you remember, I'm a kid of the 80s, and I know the discussions that we had in math when calculators starting to be cheap, and everybody had his pocket calculator, and they were forbidden in math tests at the beginning, right? Because the math test was designed that the result is the most important part. If the result is right, I'll give you a full grade. If not, etc., etc. So with calculators, you kind of had a way to cheat. Then that changed. So you had open book tests where you could take, or at least where you could take your calculator, because there was an assessment, a real assessment of these questions. So the machine forced us to change the way we assess knowledge and education in a better way, to be honest. So now that's going to happen as well with AI, in a more impactful, more orders of magnitude more than the basic pocket calculator did that with math, right? So the assessment part, right? But the assessment part, okay, you want to ask another question? I see it in your face.
There's just something that popped in my mind. Because you mentioned the scalability and the difficulty for like people to grade, like spend hours grading tests and things. Like, do you see this AI technology supporting on that side of things, like to grade papers and to really speed up that process?
Definitely, there will be no other way to do it. So now the instant reactions to that is do we forbid the students and the school kids to use ChatGPT? Do we do the assessment in a different way so that they can't use ChatGPT? And I think there will be some experiments in these two areas, but I think what will prevail is we will use ChatGPT to do the assessments, right? So we will use AI to assess whether AI was used, how it was used, is it good, etc. And one more thing, I think we will use AI in the assessment, as in we will never, I think in 10 years from now, maybe less, you will never have a situation where people talk and only humans to discuss something and make a decision or an assessment of it without asking, okay, what does the AI or what does the robot think about that? Right? So it will be included at least in these kind of assessments, decision makings, etc. I used to work with a company, it must be 10 years ago, and they had the ambitious goal of being the first company to have an AI as a board member.
Wow,
right?
That's very cool.
I don't know if they did it. I'll have to check with them. Maybe they did it, but they still hide it, or I don't know. That's exactly that kind of scenario. Decision making is an area where you can easily integrate these kind of general AIs if they're good enough. So that's the change that's happening to assessment. But I think the change that ChatGPT as a general AI will bring is more radical than that, way more radical. It's not only about whether you can cheat in tests or assess, or it's not even only about the ability to create papers in minutes, right? So that's one side of the thing, right? So the ability to create content or to simulate knowledge is one thing, but the other is the capability to learn as well, right? So it's the other part, right? So you can learn a lot, and then as I said, the question is, what do the educators do if AI can the one who does this specific interaction for teaching, which is lecturing, right? So so educators have to do other stuff. What is it, right? And to me, what it is just building the capabilities of critical thinking at people. That's the only thing that's going to be the role of educator. I mean, it's I'm simplifying a lot, and it sounds very, very small, but that's a huge task, because everything else, working with content, retrieving information, analyzing information, etc., even if the AI doesn't do it for you, which it will, it can even teach you that thing, right? What it cannot teach you, or will not be able to teach you, is the critical thinking about, putting all that in context and changing the view on it, seeing if it fits, etc. That's the interaction you still have to do, and that's it, the interaction with the machine. And as I think it was Roberto Onga in his book, The Knowledge Economy, and I like that quote very, very well. He said, before AI, in all industrialization and digital transformation, etc., the way that we used machines to help us and assess us in doing stuff is we mirrored the machines. So when you're using a computer, you are mirroring the computer because you're obligated to use what the computer is giving you, right? So you're not actually free to drive it. When you use a word processor, you're actually mirroring what the word processor wants from you, right? So that's you're mirroring the machine, and with that mirroring, you get some assistance, you get some productivity. Now with AI, with general AI, you will move from mirroring the machine. We'll stop mirroring the machine because it's going to be a very normal interaction, into driving the machine, guiding the machine, or even collaborating with the machine. And it's a huge change. It's a huge change in how we create value.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. Like, I've never really heard that it described in that way before, but it paints such a good picture to just kind of really put you in the driver's seat of the machine.
It does.
Yeah. And so, I feel like some people, like, I think that's such a good way to put it, especially when you get into conversations with some people that are, more on the scared side of AI, like what's going to happen, like, are they going to take over the world or whatever? But that's such a more, or a stronger way to look at it, that, it's putting us in the driver's seat. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And at the end, I mean, even in the knowledge industry, even in education, I mean, according to the knowledge economy, there are like two kinds of knowledge: the procedural knowledge, the skills to do stuff in a routine way, etc. You learn that so that you can do it, and the conceptual knowledge, right? So to start thinking how to create procedures, right? So now the procedural knowledge is not going to be human anymore. So it's going to be machines doing all that, improving all that, etc., etc. So the shift in the whole knowledge creation, knowledge transmission, knowledge, economy is from, procedural knowledge to conceptual knowledge. That's what you have to teach people. It's not the machine can teach them procedural knowledge. It can learn it, it can teach it. There's not going to be a big challenge, right? So that's going to be also a huge change for vocational schools, for example, etc. So we are shifting from an economy where you have these kind of both knowledge streams as an important part of the workforce or whatever, to just the conceptual knowledge needed for driving the machine, for guiding the machine. That's going to be the one where you can keep your job. The others, but everybody, I mean, it's not like you need a lot of qualification to be capable of conceptual knowledge. Think about it like that. Even if you do procedural stuff, but you're capable of creating metaphors, for example, to explain things, you're in the conceptual realm. So everybody is capable of that. It's a different way in applying your knowledge in for a job or for work or for a task.
Right. So you don't really feel like this is ultimately going to replace too many jobs. It's just going to really.
Oh, it is going to replace many jobs, but it's going to create also new jobs. Right?
Yeah.
So an analogy, a good analogy of that I think I read, I think it's Agrawal who wrote that if you think about the change that happened in the taxi and ride hailing industry, right? So the AI in mapping was capable of changing the whole industry from a few people doing procedural stuff. That's the taxi drivers. They know how to do it. They're equipped with the not only the skill but also the technology to do it. But then you open up a technology, make it accessible to everyone. That's exactly what ChatGPT did, right? So the accessibility to everyone, right? So and suddenly you have a different ecosystem. You have instead of 200,000 taxi drivers in the US, I think today it's like 3 million cab drivers, if you include all the companies that do hail riding, etc. So did it replace the jobs of the taxi drivers? Yes, in a way, but it created even more. It changed the whole dynamics around it. That's what it did. Right? And it's the same thing that's going to happen also in the education industry. Will it replace lecturers? I think yes, to a big part. Will it eliminate educators? No, of course not. It will create even more need for educators because you need more people to guide the machines to drive them.
So it just kind of shifts the different parts of their jobs and then kind of the importance level. That's cool. Obviously this is going to affect so many different industries, and especially like I refer to them as like kind of knowledge workers, people who have like gone to school and spent lots of money to like hone their craft and get their job. And you're looking at some of this technology being able to write a 60,000 word book off a few prompts, or be able to code websites or engineer apps, things like that. Do you feel like there's any industries? Well, okay, this is kind of a two-part question, I guess. Like, what do you feel like the overall effects on the economy might be with all these kind of shifts? And do you feel like there's any industries that it could really replace instead of shift the importance of kind of the aspects of a job?
Completely replace. I don't know. I learned not to do any forecasts about economic shifts and what happens, etc. Because it's very difficult to forecast. You never know. But yes, like when the whole ChatGPT thing started, I started thinking, okay, what will be the jobs that will definitely or shall be replaced? Because I was like, okay, let me be honest with myself, even about myself and my job. I mean, I started as a developer many years ago from a technology background. Yes, development is going to change, right? So the entry-level developer that we have today that's going to be replaced by ChatGPT or by the code generating AI very soon, right? So we shift into more conceptual work. So basically, every knowledge worker that is basing their work on procedural knowledge is in the danger to be replaced. Like how fast that's going to happen, it depends, as I said, on the regulation in the industry, etc. For example, if you take, I don't know how it's in other parts of the world, but in Germany, if you take pharmacists, for example, right? So 80% of pharmacists in Germany, what do? You go as a customer with a prescription from the doctor, and you give it to them. They check it. They type it into the computer. A machine, brings it from their stock, from their whatever their storage they have. They give it to you, and maybe they make a comment or two about how you should use it, and information you already have received from your doctor, so you don't really need it. And if there are conflicts between medications or stuff, they would tell you. That's pure procedural knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So I can imagine tomorrow there would be a machine, an ATM for my, medications. Right. I go with the prescription, I put it in there, I have an identification, and the machine, even gives me the advice I need to relate it to this. So that's pure procedural knowledge that can be taken over if regulation allows. That can be taken over within years, right? So we don't have any. 80% of the pharmacists that don't have, the license to conceptually create something new medications, new portions, etc., etc.
Right? Yeah, something like that's like so easy for a machine to just train itself on or get trained on.
Way too easy at the moment, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
And let's not forget that what we're seeing today with general AI, with ChatGPT, it's just the beginning, right? With GPT-4, we will see a lot with the big companies investing now heavily. Google must have red alert now, because in a few years, if they don't come up with something similar, I think very, very few people will be using Google for their access to knowledge, right? I installed this great Chrome plugin of ChatGPT that, when you search in Google, it gives you the answer of ChatGPT at the same time. And I on the right side, and I'm catching myself now looking more to the right than to, the noise that Google is producing with, with the ads and the rankings and the SEO and stuff like that, So, and I know if that continues, for me personally, in a few months, I will rarely use Google anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. What's that called? I'd love to add that. Is it just ChatGPT?
I think it's ChatGPT Chrome plugin. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I'm doing that right after we get off here. That's really cool.
I can only recommend it. With all the performance problems that ChatGPT has now, it's a bit shaky, but this will be fixed soon, I think.
Yeah, I was reading an article the other day on kind of how Google's been responding to a lot of the AI technology and how they're really putting a big emphasis on, being able to identify AI written content on Google and like rank it lower and keep pushing it down like they do with a lot of other things. But I just found that kind of interesting that was.
Yeah. But I think that the challenge that Google has is a more of a different one. It's like, so if you ask ourselves, why was ChatGPT so successful, or OpenAI with ChatGPT especially so successful, even if I think the technology behind what they do is not very superior to stuff that Google has. I think the only part where their success will be, will succeed is because it's open. It's open AI. It's accessible by everyone. So you don't wait until you have an application, the killer application for your AI, and then make money out of it. You just open it up, make it, because the more we go into general AI, the less it's going to be, possible for one organization to do innovation on that, because it's open. It's human knowledge that has to be processed. You cannot, preserve that in one and go. You're much faster if you open it up and get all the feedback, and then go back and say, okay, now we have the use cases that, where we can add value. So and what OpenAI is doing now, it's not looking at the dollars, where the dollars today are, but where the dollars are going to be tomorrow. That's what Google used to do, right? Before they got stuck with their AdSense model, etc. So looking at where are the dollars today, right? That's not going to be the successful strategy for AI based services and applications. You have to open it up.
Yeah. And I feel like that's just kind of the way a lot of things are going these days. Everything's a lot more open concept. Myself working in open innovation,
Exactly.
it just everything seems to be going into a lot more of like a collaborative, open environment. That being said, with all these new technologies kind of popping up like AI, ChatGPT, there's like metaverse, augmented reality, all these things, crypto, blockchain, it just seems almost overwhelming sometimes for organizations and people that I talk to, that there's like, what are the most important ones? Where do I start? How do I implement them in my business? Do I hire a whole team that like understands blockchain to start innovating around that technology or whatever it is? And that's kind of like the seems to be a common theme, where it's like, where do we start? How do we get going? And we've actually worked with some organizations that on just that, just trying to figure out and using crowdsourcing to get an idea of where the jump off point is. Airbus just ran a challenge with us where they just asked the crowd, like, how can we use metaverse technology in our passenger experience? And they were just looking for ideas and guidance from the crowd. They got some really cool results from it. My mind instantly went to, you got a nice vacation to a beach and you sit on your special seat on the plane. They put a VR headset on you and you're already at the beach or something. And your 5-hour flight, you're just sitting there on the beach, the virtual beach.
Cool. That's a cool one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The possibilities are endless. I think it'd be really cool, but it's, we're really seeing a lot of organizations kind of leveraging our platform and what we do to kind of navigate some of these. Where do you see like AI or ChatGPT kind of fitting in or having the most impact in the education industry?
I think it's a good chance to get that kind of the challenge that we discussed about this balance between personalization or achieving a high level on personalization and scale at the same time. I think with all the lack of the technology did not serve well in this sector, but general AI has the chance to achieve that, to help us create a journey, an education journey, meaning the journey for the educators and for the learners at the same time, that is through and through scalable but personalized at the same time. I truly believe in that, and with that there's a huge change that's going to happen. And I mean, it might be a bit provocative, but I read it somewhere that if things go well, we will be in the last days of the dark ages of education.
Wow.
We will look back at the years that the 150 years that we modern education has been growing and working, and we will look at it as the dark ages that changed radically with an alignment of AI, and then it's a completely different way that we do education. I truly believe that there is a chance that we can get there, because the move, the shifting is going to be massive. Right?
That's a huge statement to make, and it's like so exciting to be able to be 10 years from now and look back at you're going to rewatch this podcast and be like, look, we talked about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it will take more than that. I think we will be able, me and you, to look back and see, wow. I mean things like that have happened in our lifetime, right? So the smartphone has changed our life within, I don't know, 15 years. Now you cannot imagine your life without a smartphone, right? You cannot imagine your life without internet, etc. That all happened in decades. And these things are getting faster and faster, even this kind of change. And I think in education, it will be 10 years, maybe maximum 20 years, where we'll look back and say, wow, these were different times, right? So there was a different concept of education, totally different way to do it. And I think, and what makes me, optimistic about that is, when this whole thing came up, especially in a country like Germany that is really conservative in looking at regulations of health and education, etc. It has been on. The first declaration of the Teachers Association in Germany was we should not forbid ChatGPT, we should not fight it, we should embrace it, we should find ways to integrate it into the education journey. We don't know how, but we should do that. And that gives me hope, right? So if the main stakeholders are open to it, they can push towards regulation, they can push towards technology, you know, because technology has to also do some stuff with, you know, what we discussed before, the plagiarism control and all of that. So we need to do some of that as well. So, but if there is enough positive push, like we want to do that, we want to grow with it, but we want to change things here and there, then there is a huge chance that this shift can happen very quickly.
Wow. Well, that's really promising, you know, getting that buy-in from the upper levels.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
you know, I feel like, you know, that's the approach that every industry or government or organization kind of has to take. It's like, this is here. Like it's not coming, like it's going to keep growing. It's like adapt or you know, wind up like Blockbuster, right? It's like,
exactly.
you know, you got to do it. You know, usually I like to end with asking you what your kind of 5-year or 10-year vision is, but I feel like we've just kind of like had
I think we just did that.
Some fantastic points about that, you know, like getting out of the dark ages and things like that. So really exciting times. You know, I'm really looking forward to kind of staying in touch and you know, hearing about how you're navigating all this technology and kind of staying up to date on what's going on in the education world. But you know, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to get together with me today and chat about this topic. It's something you're obviously extremely passionate about. I find it very interesting, and I know a lot of our listeners will as well. You know, I hope we can find some ways to stay in touch and work together in the future. You know, we would love to host some sort of challenge around AI and you know, the functionalities around it. So if yourself or you know anybody that's just kind of looking to do that, we would love to do some things in this space. But yeah, you know, if you have any closing remarks, I'd love to give you the opportunity to just
likewise, Adam. Thank you very much for having me and for giving the chance and the very nice conversation. Yes, I am passionate about this, and I'm happy that we're living in these times, very interesting times, right? So. And yes, I will gladly would look with you into collaboration spaces and areas where we can work on metaverse or AI or all these things. And maybe we can do in 10 years, another podcast or whatever the format will be called by then, probably not podcast, and look back at this conversation and say, wow, what happened in these last 10 years, right? That would be really great.
Yeah, well, probably in 10 years you'll be talking to a robot or something, and not me. And
yeah, maybe our avatars will be like independent and they will be talking to each other.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, you know, at the end of the day, with how fast everything's moving, I feel like we'll have to get together long before 10 years just to kind of have another chat. But
same feeling.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I just want to thank everybody who's listening right now. You know, keep your sights on this powerful leader as he drives innovation to make the world education the most seamless and enjoyable it can be. You can follow Raid directly on LinkedIn if you'd like to follow along yourself. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to shoot either of us a message. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn as well, or you can reach out anytime at possibilities@herox.com. Again, my name is Adam Olsen, and I'm always happy to continue these conversations online. Thank you very much.
Thank you.